Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is going to be the mid-year book freakout tag. So we've reached the midway point to the year, and what a year it's been. I have just read and finished my 100th book, so my reading year is going great. I'm very happy with how my reading has gone and how many books I've read. There was like maybe 1 month that wasn't that great of a month. I was kind of in a slump, but even then I managed to read some books, so I can't be too mad. And I've read, like I said, 100 books so far, and I'm hoping to finish a lot more than that. I had some disappointments, but mostly the year was positive, and I found some new favorites, some that I didn't even know would be my cup of tea. So I am just happy to get this ball rolling and start with the first question. So the first question is, what is your favorite book you've read so far this year? And of course, I can't answer with just one book, so I got two for you. Two for the price of one. So the first book is The Scarlet Alchemist by Kylie Lee Baker. I think I've been shouting about this book in every vlog and video that I did. Zoomies of my cat, I'm sorry. So I've been raving about this book ever since I've read it in the beginning of the year, and I am not going to stop. I'm sorry. You will see this again on my channel for the foreseeable future, because this is one of my favorite books of the year, maybe even ever. I just love this and I can't wait to reread this. This is a Chinese history inspired fantasy with alchemy making people invincible and immortal. You have dead people getting resurrected. You have a competition to become the royal alchemist. You have a bit of a romance. Family takes a big part in this. And then just plot twist after plot twist after plot twist. My jaw was on the ground. I have a vlog reading this and I'm so glad that I caught it, and I was just so happy to get around to reading this. It's amazing. Read it, read it, read it, read it. And like I said, I couldn't just pick one book, so I picked two, and the second one was The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. I don't have my copy with me. I lent it to my sister and she still has it. I want it back. I have the sequel waiting right here, but the first book just blew me away. I had this urge to just keep picking it up. I couldn't put it down. I was kind of in a reading rush when I read it. I was just blown away by the story and by the characters. And this book is about a human girl trying to survive a world that is ruled by vampires, and there's a competition to— I love competitions, I just noticed. So there's a competition where she can gain even more power, but in competing she is risking her life and is risking losing everything that she has worked for so far in her life, and she has to go and make some alliances with some maybe not so trustworthy people, but there's a romance, and I just love this world, and I just loved how it sucked me in, and I just want more. Next up, we have what is your best sequel that you've read this year, and again, couldn't just answer with one, so I came with 3 answers to this one. And the first one is the sequel to Threads That Bind, Hearts That Cut. I again have a vlog for that. I'm gonna link it up above. That was the finale to the duology, and what a finale it was. Again, that ending blew my mind. I love the mind of the author. Kika Hatsupulu just knows how to weave her threads of the plot and of the characters and like our heartstrings. And it was amazing. I really loved it. I thought it was well done. I loved that it was only like a 2-part series. So if they'd made it more than 2 books, I think that would have been a disservice to the story. I think it was wrapped up nicely, and I just really enjoyed that. So this is a fantasy noir kind of story in a dystopian world where the descendants of gods live among humans, and they have powers that can be very dangerous. For example, the main character Io, she has the power to see the threads that connect people with experiences and things and people and their own life. And so if she cuts those things, that love that they feel towards that thing, or even their life force gets cut, and they lose that, and they maybe even die. So there is a lot of power in that, and we follow Io when there is a mystery afoot and she needs to solve it in order to save her town, and maybe even more than that. Lots of great things, a lot of great topics that are brought up in that series, so I can highly recommend you not only read the sequel, but of course the first one as well if you haven't already. The next sequel that I loved was Sunbringer by Hannah Kanna. This is the sequel to Godkiller, and I just enjoyed this so much. I think I even enjoyed this a bit more than Godkiller, because I knew what to expect. I was kind of familiar with the characters. In this world, we have lots of gods. You basically can pray to a god, give him a temple, and he starts to exist. So for a long time, lots of gods were roaming the earth until one young king decided enough is enough. They have too much power because those that are worshipped the most, they are basically invincible. So he started to kill all the gods, and there are only a few left. Most of them are in one city, and so we follow a group of people who are all trying to reach that city for different reasons in order to gain favor from these last gods. Really liked the first one, really enjoyed the second one. There was one scene where like the magic just exploded basically, and I just loved it. Can't wait to see where the author takes this story next. And I couldn't talk about sequels without mentioning this one. It's German, but I still needed to just mention it right now. And that is Windstärke 17 by Caroline Wahl. This is the sequel to 22 Bahnen, which was a favorite of mine last year. And in this series, or like series of companion novels, we follow two sisters, and in this one we follow the younger sister about 10 years after the first book, and we just see how desperate she is, how angry she is. And the most amazing thing about this is that the debut was phenomenal. The author has such a unique writing style where you have to take a second to get used to it, but then you're just flying through the book, and it's so unique. And it's so unique that you actually know right away when you read this book it's the same author. But she has that ability to capture this main character so well, because the sisters are so different, so they have very different ways of narrating the story, but you still see that it's the same author, which I find baffling that she can actually do that. So I can't wait to see what this author does next, and hopefully it will be soon. The next question is, are there any 2024 releases that you still need to get to? And there are, of course, a lot of them, but I picked 3 that I just quickly want to mention right now. The first one is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I still haven't read that one because I was kind of disappointed by Happy Place. I DNF'd that one. Soft DNF because I might still at some point get back to it, but it just wasn't my vibe. Just couldn't, like, with the characters. But I'm still very intrigued to read Emily Henry's new work, and I've heard good things, and maybe July is the month that I will actually get to it. But yeah, we'll see. Here's hoping. And the other 2 books that I'm really hoping to get to very soon ish is Of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. This is one of the last books that I acquired, and I can't wait to get to this one. This is Silk Punk, which is something that I just learned that it exists. It's basically steampunk but inspired by Asian mythology. Love the cover, love the idea of the story. There is like a Mulan retelling aspect of this that I just love and can't stay away from. And then we have The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. I've never read anything by this author before, but I've heard great things about this one. People can't stop raving about it. This has like a mystery aspect in the fantasy world that I actually really enjoy at the moment, where there is something happening and the main characters kind of have to play detective to find out what's happening. I just am in love with this book, like with the cover, so I can't wait to get to this one as well. I think the next question will be the one that I have the most books for as an answer, and that is upcoming anticipated releases, like for the later half of the year. And I mean, come on, of course, there are so many, especially since there are going to be so many sequels released, which is funny because I usually don't get to sequels very soon after reading the first book, but these are the ones where I'm like, I see you, I want to read you. And for me, most of the time I plan on getting new releases, like of new series or standalones. I mark them, I bookmark them, I'm planning on getting them, I buy a lot of the new releases, but they're not like the ones where I'm like, ooh, I really need to get to them right away, like I can't wait to get my hands on these because I haven't read anything by the author yet or of the series. So they are on my radar, but yeah, for me, sequels, those are the ones that I keep my eye out for. So for the 2 books that don't fit that description, so ignore what I just said. So the first one is The Spell Shop, and this just looks very cute, cozy fantasy. I've heard great things about it from people who have already read it, and I can't wait. It's gonna be released in July, so I will get my hands on it ASAP, and hopefully it's gonna bring me all the joy that I get just from looking at the cover. And then we have The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. This is actually an arc that I already have, so I could have already read this. Of course I haven't. It is released in July as well, so I'm hoping to get to it very soon in the beginning of the month. And this is a fantasy about dragons and drakes and a heist, so all those buzzwords. Come on, now let's get to the sequels. I'm just gonna mention them and I'm gonna show them here, and I'm not gonna go too much into this, but we have Chloe Gong's Vilest Things, the sequel to Immortal Longings. Loved that first book. Again, a competition. There's just something about that. Really hoping that that one blows me away. And then we have the amazing sequel to House in the Cerulean Sea, so it's Somewhere Beyond the Sea. And I might want to reread my favorite book of, I don't know, a couple of years ago before getting into this one, just to get back with these characters and see if I still love it as much as I did back then. I think it was like 2020 or something. I know I read it during the pandemic and it just made me smile and happy. And then we have Celestial Monsters, which is of course the highly anticipated sequel to the Sunbearer Trials. That one blew me away. Oh my god, what an amazing story. Again, competition, so kind of like Hunger Games, and the ending was just mind-blowing, and I can't wait to see where that cliffhanger takes us in the sequel. And I think it's the finale, so all of that will be wrapped up. I don't know how, but I'm very, very excited to get to it. And of course, the sequel to The Scarlet Alchemist is also coming out in this year still, and that is The Blood Orchid. Like I said, plot twist after plot twist with The Scarlet Alchemist, so I have hopes, I have dreams for the sequel, but I don't know which are gonna get realized or if it's a fool's hope, but I can't wait to get to that one. And I'm just already so happy that this sequel will be in my hands this year. Then we have the third book in the Mari series. So I love the first book, I really enjoyed the second book, and I can't wait for the third one. I don't know what it's about, I don't care. I love that series, I love the writing style, I love the characters, I just want more. And then we have A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, and that is by Sangu Mandana. And I really enjoyed the companion novel that is kind of the first in the series, and I just loved the cozy vibes, the found family, and I think in this one we have like a cozy magical inn, and like I think rivals to lovers, I don't know, but it's gonna be cute, it's gonna be very sweet, and I just want it. I need it in my life. And then we have Reckless, which is the sequel to Powerless, and I still have Powerful to read. This is kind of the novella that goes between those two books. We follow a different character in this one, but again, Powerless was a book that surprised me at the end of last year, and I just didn't think it would have that much of an impact on me, but yeah, I loved it. So I am very happy that the sequel is gonna come out in July as well, so I will get my hands on it ASAP, hopefully. So I think there could have been even more books for this question, but let's just keep it with those. Those are like the most highly anticipated ones. Most of those I have already pre-ordered, so hopefully they will get to me soon. With the next one, I'm gonna make it, I think, a bit shorter, and that is books that I still need to read this year, because oh boy. Yeah, I think for that I'm just gonna tell you to watch my June TBR, because in that one, for June, I put together all the books that I had on my TBRs in the beginning of the year, like from February to May, and I looked at all the books that I still need to read from those TBRs. And if you then watch my June wrap-up that's coming, you will know that there are still a lot of books on my June TBR that I haven't gotten to. So all of those don't have to be read, but they're still on my radar. And I don't want to put even more like books out, because I love that I've been mood reading a lot. I just pick up what appeals to me. I'm in my fantasy era, but I still want to see if I can maybe read more sci-fi or get back to romance a bit more. I'm not really feeling the romance right now. I've been surprised by contemporary YA books like Who Am I? I'm very surprised by that one. So who knows what the rest of the year will bring. There are lots of books. Let's just go with that. Lots of books that need to be read. If you want an answer, if I have to give you an answer right now, it would be Ruthless Vows. Wow, that's hard to pronounce. It would be Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. I read the first book as, I think, an ebook, and I loved it so much that I got the physical copy. Needed to get this one right away, but I haven't read it since. I remember loving the first book, so I don't know why it's taken me so long to get back to this, but I want to. So if you want an answer to this big question, let's go with this one. Next we have Biggest Disappointments. I I have two answers for that. The first one I haven't even finished yet, and I know it's going to be one of my most disappointing reads of the year, and that is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. And it's not because it's like horrible or bad or whatever, but I just had so much like hope for this and faith that I'm gonna love it, because it's like the Mummy and Indiana Jones and all of that wrapped up together in a fantastical story. It just fell a bit flat. I'm on page 246 of like 390 or something. It's like I don't have much left of the book, but I just keep not picking it back up, even though I think we're at a point where it's finally getting somewhere. But so far it's been a bit a lot of talking, a lot of her trying to get people to take her serious and take her with them, and I'm just like I wanted a bit more of the banter as well. But yeah, so far a bit disappointing. And the next one is going to be a surprise to some people, not to others, and that is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This, I'm gonna link my, I think, May wrap up. Was it May? I think I read it in May. So I'm gonna leave the wrap up where I talk about this book up above and down in the description bar. I don't hate this book. It's not the worst book ever, but I was disappointed because so many people like were raving about this book or putting this as their favorite book ever. Not for me. I thought it was in parts well written, but I felt like these were three separate kind of stories, especially the writing styles. I feel like I've read three different books, and the last part was just going in a direction that I just didn't like, didn't enjoy, which makes me kind of worry about where the series is going, and if I want to keep going. I'm not sure. We'll see when the sequel comes out and what people are saying about that one. But so far, yeah, disappointing a bit. This is a very political heavy fantasy, but also takes place in like a magical school. There is intrigue, there is betrayal, there's a revenge plot, all of that wrapped up in essentially a very good story that just took a turn that I wasn't really happy with. Let's go with that and keep it short and brief. Let's go back to positive things, and that is the biggest surprise of the year. Again, I have two, and one, I'm sorry for the English speaking people watching this, it's a German one again, and it's not even out yet, but I just loved it and I need to mention it right now. And that is Die Himmelsrichtung by Jo Ländle. And this tells the story of Amelia Earhart and her life, but actually told backwards. So we start with her last flight, and we always go back a step in her life and her achievements and learn more about that period in her time, and then we take a step back again and do the same. And it was just so well done. I loved her as a character. Of course, I don't know how much of that was fictionalized, how much of that was real, but I just really enjoyed it, and I couldn't get enough. I couldn't stop reading, and I'm gonna think about that one for a very long time. But I have another book that surprised me a hell of a lot, and that is Not My Problem by Kiera Smith. I mentioned before that I'm now reading YA contemporary and enjoying it. That's new to me. I thought I was done with contemporary YA, but nope, I'm back in it, and now I'm kind of like looking and searching for those special books that might just make me very happy, as did this one. This is a story about Aideen, who has problems at home that she doesn't really want and can't really deal with, so she takes it upon herself to take care of problems other people have. The beginning of it, like her beginnings of doing that, are very rough and really not by her choice, but in the end she gets more and more into it, and I love the way that she just does it and the friendship that is taking place in this book, and just I couldn't stop smiling. There's humor in this, there are heartfelt moments, there is a queer relationship going on. I love it. You will see this one in a second again, but yeah, so far really surprised me and I really loved it. The next question asks for a new favorite author, and I'm going to talk about two that I already mentioned here. The first is Kylie Lee Baker. I loved this one so much, and I really enjoyed her debut, The Keeper of Night, and I just oh, there you go. That's a problem. and I enjoyed both of them so much. So I just want to know where this author is taking not only this story, but like her next ideas, like what kind of spin-off is it, what kind of fantastical retelling, or even in like what part of the world we're going, because she did Chinese inspired fantasy. With the Keeper of Night, it's Japanese, because I think the author herself is of Japanese Chinese descent. So I'm just very intrigued about everything that she does. It's almost very dark in parts, but there is just so much about the main characters that you just root for and that you love, and you just so even though I haven't read too much by this author, and even though I didn't give Keeper of the Night like 5 stars like I did with this one, I still think this is one of my new favorite authors. And then of course we have Kikazupuru. Again, I've only read this one series by this author, but I just know that the way of her writing, the way of her thinking, the way of her plotting, and the characters that she develops, making me love tropes in this book that I normally hate. I want more. I was on the street team for the release of the sequel, and so I got to talking with the author and just getting to know her more, and she's just such an amazing human being. And she told us a bit about her works in progress and in what kind of direction she takes her next stories, and they sound so amazing. I can't wait to get my hands on them, and I hope they will be released very soon. Told you I was going to talk about this one again. So the next question is favorite character, and I love Aideen in this, don't get me wrong, but there is a boy in this, Kavi, and he's so adorable. I think all my favorite characters that I am going to talk about are just because they're adorable, and I couldn't stop smiling whenever they were on the page. Kavi is just the cutest. In the beginning of this, the way that Aideen gets roped into helping other people is by a very random encounter, and that would have been it, but Kavi witnesses all of that, and then he brings people to her. And it's like, you solve problems now you can help them. She's kind of like, oh my god, this guy again. And he's just adorable. I was feeling for him, like my heart broke for him a little bit because he didn't seem to have many friends, and he was kind of oblivious to it, or maybe not oblivious, but he was kind of, the way that he talked about it, that he just doesn't have anybody to talk to, and that he was just, you just knew that he was kind of attaching himself to Aideen because he was so lonely and he wanted friends, and he was the best friend really. And it was the cutest way that he just always appeared out of nowhere. So they would, for example, be talking, and all of a sudden he would just say something to the conversation. Everybody was like, there he is, how did he get here? And it was just done in the most cute, adorable way possible. Love Kavi. I just want him to know that he has a friend in me. The next character that I really loved is one in 5 Broken Blades, and of course now I can't remember her name, but she is the thief of the group of people who are doing a heist in this one. So they're all conspiring together to assassinate an impossible to kill king. And so they need, of course, a thief, because the thing that makes him immortal and like impossible to kill is a crown that needs to be stolen for them to assassinate him, basically. And they need a thief. And they chose one who is so sweet and so adorable and so awkward, and I just want to hug her and be like, it's okay, you're on a voyage to assassinate someone with the weirdest, darkest people, but it's okay because you're adorable. And she herself knows this. Like, she was like, oh, I made it awkward, didn't I? And the way that her like relationship happens in this book is also just so cute, because he's kind of like, oh my god, she's so awkward and she's so weird, like what's happening here, but he can't stop thinking about her. And it's just like, all of the relationships in this are amazing. And what I really loved, and I didn't mention this in my wrap-up, what I loved about this is that we have, of course, like with so many of these books that have like a huge cast and are kind of touching YA more than adult, even though this is adult, but you kind of, all of them couple up. So you kind of know there are going to be multiple relationships happening in this series, and you kind of know right away like who's gonna get together with whom. But what I liked with this one is that you actually get situations where all of them interact with all of the other people. Like, they are on a voyage, so they always have to sit in coaches, and instead of always the same people sitting next to each other, they switch. So you have conversations between the most unlikely people in this group scenario, and you kind of see different sides of the people, and it's not just okay, there's this couple, there's this couple, there's this couple, and we don't really see any of the other ones interacting and like forming a relationship. So we have this found family because all of them get to know all of them, which I just love. So I really enjoy all of the characters, but most of all the thief, whose name I still don't really remember. But yeah, love her. And again, I couldn't go on without mentioning these two cuties. It's A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland. This is such a cute and unique story, basically set in a fantastical world, like Persian inspired world. I think Persian. Don't quote me on that. And the main characters are just so well done. You have the prince, who has mental health issues and he just wants to keep that to himself. He feels very sad and forlorn, feels guilty about it because he thinks he should have this big alpha male persona, but he doesn't, so he feels vulnerable, and I just love it. And then you have his new bodyguard, who is kind of disappointed that this is kind of the thing that he has to do all day. Watch that bad guy. And he himself is such a unique character because he's not just the typical bodyguard. There is so much of his character that was formed by being a guard, by being less than the people that he's guarding, and not having much physical contact with anybody. So he just needs to learn to appreciate like the touch and being able to say, yeah, I deserve to have your love and your affection. And also just the conversations about reciprocation, and this just makes me always so happy to talk about and recommend, and I love these too. Love them. And both of them are so awkward about it. Love it. Come on. It's funny because all of the plot starts with Maeve falling down the stairs, and now this book is basically jumping all the time. Next we have a book that made you cry, and I cry at everything. I can hear a sad song, I can read about like the littlest thing. I could watch a reel and I could tear up. But I don't really remember sobbing at one of the books that I read so far this year. It may have happened with this one, but I'm not sure if I did, because it's so normal for me to cry at books that I don't really notice it anymore. So we're just gonna go with this one, even though I'm not really sure, but it is very sad at some points. Let's go to the ones that make me happy. And again, I'm gonna talk about Serpent of Wings and Night because again, I couldn't put it down. This was just such a rush and it made me so happy, and I had the feeling that the last time I had it with like Fourth Wing, where it wasn't like the most perfect story, but I just couldn't get enough. Funnily enough, both of them, I have the sequels and I didn't get to them yet, so what does that say about me and how much I loved this book? Kavi, Aideen, love their humor. I had to laugh so much with this one, just from the get-go. It was very humorous, it was really fun to read. I loved the banter with the different characters. I just loved all of it, and it made me really happy. Do I need to say more? Again, Hearts That Cut. If you watch my vlog of me reading that, I was just so happy and I was like all the time, especially with the ending, and yeah, made me happy. Two books that I haven't talked about in this video yet and also made me really happy. One was a middle grade, and that was No One Leaves the Castle. That was an easy 5-star because of the humor and because of just the random things that happened in this book. And it is about a haunted castle, and they need like a hero to come and save them because something went missing and they needed to be found. And the person that they thought was like one of the best people in the business turns out to be a little girl who has never done a job like this before. Loved it. Couldn't put it down. Really want a physical copy of that one, so I have my eyes out. And then the other one that really made me happy was Ali Hazelwood's Check and Mate. I liked her romance a lot when I read it, but I would never say it was like a favorite or something. With this one, with her YA, it just got me in a different way. So I loved the emotional part in this. This might actually be one where I cried as well. not really sure anymore, but it has potential because there is so much emotion and familial problems with this in this one, and this made me like chess and like Google chess champions and stuff. So if you can do that, you're a good book. The next question is, which book is the most beautiful that you've hauled this year? And I couldn't just pick one, so I picked two. One that I've already talked about, and that is The Tainted Cup, because this is just beautiful, and I hope that the vibe of this transports itself into the story, because come on, love it. And the other book that I would pick for this is Fate Inked in Blood. I think this is very beautiful. I was going back and forth of the different editions that I could get with this one. I didn't love the ones that I think Fairy Loot or something did, like one of the subscription boxes, because they have like a certain style nowadays that I don't really mesh well with. So I'm very, very glad that I got just the normal edition with the sprayed edges. But it also has this Under the Dust jacket, which I love. Still haven't gotten around to reading this though, even though Danielle L. Jensen is one of my favorite authors. So who knows? Hopefully editing this and talking about this more and more will actually make me want to pick it up. Come on, get on it. That took me way too long. And the last question that I want to talk about is your favorite rereads. And for that I have 3 books. The first one, I don't think anybody's going to be surprised, is Threads That Bind. I love this series so much, and this was my favorite book, or one of my favorite books of last year. So I wanted to reread it in order to get to the sequel, and I'm so glad that I did because I loved rereading it. I loved it even more than the first time I read it, and I even got to do like a read-along for this one, and that made it very special. And during the read-along I started annotating it, which is something that I never do. I never write in my books, and doing that with this one, even like a special edition, just means I'm never gonna give this away. This is gonna stay on my shelves forever. I didn't get far with my annotations, so I might want to get back to this at some point and continue. But yeah, loved my reread, one of my favorites of the year. The next reread that I really enjoyed was Fire by Kristen Cashore. I read this a very, very long time ago when it first came out, and I've read it in German only, so I've reread it now in English and I loved it. I love how these hold up. I love how even after all this time the magic system is just very unique and amazingly done, and how all of this is like interwoven, like the different countries and different magic systems and the different stories. I still want to continue with the series because there are still newer books in the series that I haven't gotten to yet. So the next book has been on my TBR for a couple of months and I just need to get to it. But yeah, rereading Fire was amazing. There were 1 or 2 things that I had an issue with, but the rest, loved it. And the last reread that I did that I really enjoyed more than I thought I would was The Lord of the Rings. Thanks to Gav, I reread this in the beginning of the year. I read all 3 of the books. This is the bind up, and I loved it. There again were parts that I could have done without, like a certain singer in this book, but the rest, oh my god, and because I didn't really care for this edition, I again just annotated it. I underlined favorite quotes. I made like little things that loved this. I remember liking it when I read it when I was like 11 or something, but it was a very dense read back then and I was very scared going back and maybe hating it reading it now. But this holds up as well. It's so different from the movies. It just goes so much deeper into all of the lore and everything, and again, loved it so much. So I love finishing off this tag with books that I loved, and even like old favorites that people may have not heard about this past year because it's been like a reread. People have already read this like years ago. But yeah, if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already for more content to come, and let me know down in the comments what were your favorite reads of the year so far. Are there any books that you have your eye on? And until next time, I hope you have all the great reads. Bye!